Someone is carrying a message they are too afraid to send you. And the urgent part is not what they want to say, it is what their silence has already revealed. Before you assume they forgot, you ask yourself why your name still disturbs their peace. If this message feels like it was meant for you, stay with this until the end, because the final sign will explain why their energy keeps returning. Someone is not silent because the feeling has disappeared. That is the easy explanation, but it is not always the true one. Sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is pressure. It is what happens when a person feels more than their ego knows how to carry. They may act distant, cold, busy, or unaffected, but beneath that mask, there is a storm they do not know how to name. The truth has started moving inside them, and it has become heavier than their excuses. When a person knows they mishandled something real, they do not always return quickly. Often, they withdraw deeper because your presence reminds them of who they failed to become. You became a mirror, not because you demanded perfection, but because your sincerity exposed their confusion. Your love, your patience, your absence, your silence after being hurt, all of it has started speaking louder than any argument could. This is why they may watch from a distance, think about you at strange hours, replay old conversations, or feel your energy when they try to move on. Their pride tells them to stay quiet, but their inner world keeps pulling them back to the truth. And the truth is simple. They were not untouched by you. They were changed by you. But here is where you must stay strong. Do not mistake their silence for permission to chase. If their heart is heavy, let them carry that weight until it teaches them honesty. Because a message forced out of guilt is not the same as a message born from awakening. The urgent thing is not that they text you today. The urgent thing is that they finally face themselves. Their silence is not your responsibility to fix. It is their lesson, their shadow, their confrontation with what they avoided. And if they truly feel what they never said, life will push them toward truth. Until then, you stay centered, because your worth was never supposed to depend on someone's courage. The message they carry is not always made of words. Sometimes it lives in their nervous system, in the way they pause before deleting your name, in the way certain songs suddenly become uncomfortable, in the way ordinary places remind them of a connection they tried to bury. Their mouth may say nothing, but their inner world is already confessing. That is why the silence feels loud. That is why you may sense something unfinished, even when no contact has happened. Their pride is the gatekeeper. It stands at the door and says, "Do not admit it. Do not look weak. Do not return first. Do not expose what you feel." But the soul does not obey pride forever. The soul remembers what was real. It remembers the safety they felt around you, the way you understood parts of them they could barely explain, the warmth they took for granted because they assumed it would always be available. This is the painful split inside them. One part wants to keep the mask on. Another part wants to tell the truth. One part says, "Move on, stay distracted, pretend it meant nothing." Another part whispers, "You know exactly who still lives inside your chest." That inner conflict becomes the urgent message, not because they have already sent it, but because something in them is becoming impossible to silence. But listen carefully. Their emotional confession is not enough until it becomes mature action. Feeling deeply is not the same as loving responsibly. Missing you is not the same as repairing what they broke. Regret is not the same as growth. So do not be hypnotized by energy alone. Let truth prove itself through behavior. If they are being pulled back toward you, let them come with honesty, clarity, and respect. Let them speak without games. Let them stop hiding behind timing, fear, ego, and confusion. because the message their soul carries may be powerful, but you are not here to translate someone's silence forever. At some point, the person who truly feels the truth must become brave enough to say it. They thought distance would help them forget you. That is the part nobody talks about. People often run toward distractions, believing new faces, new conversations, or temporary excitement will erase a deep emotional imprint. At first, it works for a moment. Noise can numb reflection. Attention from others can create the illusion of healing. But eventually, comparison begins. Quietly, unconsciously, ruthlessly. Every shallow interaction starts exposing what they lost with you. They notice how rare emotional safety actually is, how difficult it is to feel understood without pretending, how uncommon it is to meet someone whose presence reaches beyond attraction and touches the hidden parts of the mind. What they dismissed too casually has now become the standard they compare everything else against. This is why some people suddenly become emotionally restless after trying to move on. Nothing fully satisfies them anymore. Conversations feel empty, chemistry feels forced. Even moments of pleasure carry an invisible absence. Because once someone experiences a connection that touched their inner world, ordinary distractions stop feeling meaningful for long. The soul begins rejecting substitutes, and this realization scares them, not because they do not understand it, but because they do. They understand that you are not easily replaceable. They understand that the comfort they found with you cannot simply be recreated on demand. That awareness creates pressure inside them. It forces them to question their choices, their avoidance, and the emotional walls they once defended so confidently. But you must understand something important. Their comparison is not your victory, it is their awakening. Do not sit waiting for someone to realize your value while your own life stands still. Your worth does not increase because another person finally notices your absence. Your value existed long before their recognition. If they are truly comparing everyone to you, life is already teaching them the lesson they avoided when they had direct access to your energy. Let that lesson mature naturally. Because when someone genuinely understands what they lost, their behavior changes before their words do. And until that happens, stay focused on becoming even more grounded, even more whole, and even more unavailable to anything that treats your presence like something ordinary. Your absence became a mirror they could no longer escape. While you were present, they could hide behind distractions, control, mixed signals, or emotional distance. They could blame timing, confusion, stress, or circumstances. But once you stepped back, the noise disappeared, and all that remained was their reflection. That is when the real confrontation began. Most people believe they are afraid of losing someone, but often what truly terrifies them is seeing who they become after the loss. Because separation removes the comfort of avoidance. Suddenly, there is no one left to project onto, no one left to absorb their inconsistency while still offering love. The silence exposes everything: their impatience, their emotional immaturity, their fear of vulnerability, their habit of expecting understanding while giving very little clarity in return. This is why your absence affects them more deeply than arguments ever did. Arguments can be defended against. Silence cannot. Distance creates space for memory, and memory is merciless when the connection was genuine. They begin replaying moments they once ignored. Small details return unexpectedly: the way you listened, the way you stayed patient, the emotional safety they overlooked because they assumed they had more time. And now the mirror shows them something uncomfortable. They may realize they were being loved in a way they were not yet capable of appreciating, not because they are evil, but because unconscious people often damage what they secretly need the most. They confuse emotional depth with pressure. They confuse consistency with weakness. They push away sincerity because it threatens the walls they built to survive. But your role is not to rescue them from this realization. Let the mirror do its work. Let them sit with the consequences of their own emotional patterns. Because growth that comes too easily rarely transforms anyone. Some lessons only enter the soul through loss. And this is where your power changes. You stop begging to be seen. You stop explaining your value to someone determined to misunderstand it. You become still, grounded, clear. The moment you stopped chasing their validation, the mirror became sharper. Now they are no longer just remembering you, they are being forced to remember themselves in your absence. They may look completely normal to the outside world. They go to work, reply to people, laugh at small things, scroll through their phone, continue their routines. But inner conflict does not always announce itself publicly. Some of the deepest emotional battles happen behind calm faces, and the person connected to you may be carrying a storm nobody around them fully sees. At night, when distractions weaken, the mind becomes louder. Memories return without permission. Certain moments replay repeatedly. Things they should have said begin haunting them more than the things they actually said. This is the strange nature of regret. It rarely attacks immediately. It waits until silence arrives. Then it begins pulling old emotions back to the surface. Dreams become part of this process too, not always mystical but psychological. The unconscious mind stores emotional truth differently than the conscious mind does. A person can spend all day pretending they moved on, while their deeper self keeps returning to the connection internally. That is why some people suddenly wake up thinking about someone they tried hard to forget. The soul remembers what the ego tries to suppress. And when unresolved feelings build long enough, emotional exhaustion starts appearing in indirect ways. Irritation, restlessness, difficulty concentrating, sudden mood changes, emotional numbness followed by unexpected waves of sadness. They may even throw themselves into work, attention, social activity, or new connections just to avoid sitting alone with what they truly feel. But avoidance only delays confrontation. It never removes it. The difficult truth is that your energy disrupted something inside them. You touched a part they could not fully control afterward. That is why they cannot return to the exact emotional state they were in before meeting you. Real connections alter people internally, even when they try to deny it externally. But do not romanticize their suffering. Pain alone does not make someone emotionally ready. Inner chaos is not the same as transformation. A person can miss you deeply and still remain trapped in unhealthy patterns. This is why you must watch actions more than emotional intensity. If they are truly being changed by this experience, eventually the confusion will turn into clarity, and clarity always creates movement. Not mixed signals, not breadcrumbs, not emotional games. Real clarity creates honest decisions, direct communication, and behavior that no longer hides behind fear. The message hidden inside them is not complicated anymore. Time has stripped away the excuses, the pride, the distractions, and the emotional noise. What remains is a realization they tried very hard to avoid. They now understand that losing you was not a small event in their life. It changed something fundamental inside them. At first, they may have believed your absence would be temporary in their emotions. They assumed the ache would fade, that eventually your memory would become lighter, quieter, easier to carry. But instead, the opposite happened. The longer they stayed away from you, the more clearly they began to understand your value. Not just your beauty or attention, but your emotional presence. The way you made them feel seen without forcing them to perform. The way your energy brought calm to parts of them that usually felt restless. This realization becomes painful because hindsight removes illusion. They begin seeing moments differently now. Things they once dismissed suddenly look precious. Conversations they barely appreciated now replay with emotional weight. Even your patience becomes unforgettable because they now recognize how rare it is to find someone who tried to understand them beyond their flaws. And this is where the hidden message forms inside them. I understand now what I lost when I thought you would always stay. That sentence carries enormous psychological truth. Human beings often underestimate what feels emotionally available. They become careless with consistency. They assume deep connections will wait forever. But absence creates perspective that presence sometimes cannot. The problem is that realization arrives late for many people, only after the silence, only after distance, only after the comfort disappears. Then suddenly they begin wishing they had protected what once felt natural. But listen carefully. Their awakening does not mean you must immediately reopen the door. Recognition is important, but it is not enough by itself. Someone can fully understand your value and still lack the discipline, maturity, or courage required to love you correctly. So let their realization teach them something deeper than longing. Let it teach responsibility. Because if they truly understand what they lost, they will not only return with emotions, they will return differently. Their behavior will carry the apology their words once could not express. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to force a message out of someone before that person is emotionally ready to tell the truth. They chase clarity, demand answers, over explain their feelings, or keep reopening doors that the other person still does not know how to walk through honestly. But truth forced too early becomes weak. It comes out confused, defensive, incomplete. And then people mistake temporary emotion for real transformation. This is why you must not chase the message. If someone truly feels your absence, if they genuinely understand your value, life itself will corner them into honesty eventually. You do not need to convince a soul that has already been disturbed by losing you. The disturbance is already doing the work. Your chasing only interrupts the lesson. Right now, they may still be fighting themselves internally. One moment they feel certain they should reach out, the next moment fear pulls them backward. Fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, fear that you have changed, fear that they no longer deserve access to the version of you they once took for granted. Pride adds another layer to this battle, because ego would rather suffer silently than risk exposure. But emotional growth cannot happen while someone is constantly rescued from consequences. If every time they withdraw you immediately return, they never fully experience the weight of losing your presence. And without that weight, some people remain emotionally asleep forever. Pain is uncomfortable, but pain often becomes a doorway to self-awareness. Your silence now carries more power than endless explanations ever did. Not manipulative silence, not games, real detachment, the kind that comes from respecting yourself enough to stop forcing connection where there is confusion. That energy changes the dynamic completely. Suddenly, they are no longer reacting to your pursuit. They are sitting alone with their own emotions. And that is where honesty is born, not through pressure, but through confrontation with the self. If they return before reaching that inner point, they may only come back temporarily for comfort, validation, or relief from loneliness. But when someone reaches true emotional clarity, their actions become steady. They stop hiding behind mixed signals. They stop testing your availability. They come forward with intention. So let them reach that moment on their own, because the strongest messages are never dragged out of people. They rise naturally when the soul becomes more tired of hiding than speaking the truth. The real urgency was never just about whether this person sends a message or returns to your life. The deeper urgency is transformation, because every powerful connection reaches a point where something must evolve. Either the person becomes emotionally honest and grows into the love they once could not handle, or life removes them completely, so you stop shrinking yourself for something that cannot meet you fully. This is the part many people resist. They become attached to potential instead of reality. They hold on to memories, signs, energy, and unfinished feelings while ignoring the deeper question: has this connection actually transformed anyone involved? Because intense emotions alone are not proof of destiny. Sometimes emotional intensity is simply the soul demanding growth through pain. Your connection with this person activated something important inside both of you. For them, it exposed fears, emotional wounds, avoidance patterns, and the consequences of taking genuine love lightly. For you, it exposed attachment, waiting, self-abandonment, and the danger of tying your worth to another person's awakening. That is why this experience feels so consuming. It is not just romantic, it is psychological. And now life is forcing a decision. Either they rise into maturity, accountability, and emotional courage, or the connection slowly collapses under the weight of what remained unhealed. There is no middle ground forever. People cannot stay suspended between silence and sincerity endlessly. Eventually, truth reveals itself through action or absence. This is why you must stop fearing outcomes. If they come back transformed, you will feel the difference immediately. There will be clarity instead of confusion, stability instead of emotional chaos, effort instead of excuses, presence instead of inconsistency. Real change always leaves evidence. And if they do not transform, then their disappearance becomes protection, not punishment. Because not every soul enters your life to stay forever. Some arrive to awaken your standards, your self respect, and your understanding of what love should never require you to tolerate again. The urgent message, then, is not simply that they miss you, it is that this connection has reached a point where masks can no longer survive. Something real must now emerge, either a more honest version of them or a stronger version of you. So the message is this: do not chase what is already being forced to face you in silence. If this person truly carries your name inside their heart, life will make them confront it. Not through fantasy, not through signs, not through empty longing, but through honest action. They may be fighting pride, fear, regret, and memories, but none of that matters until it becomes maturity. You were not placed in their life to beg for recognition. You were placed there to reveal something real. Your absence is now teaching what your presence could not. And if they are meant to return, they will not come back with confusion. They will come back with clarity, respect, and the courage to speak what they once buried. But if they stay silent forever, understand this clearly, that silence is also an answer. It is life removing someone who could feel deeply but could not love responsibly. The urgent message is not only from them, it is also for you. Choose peace over waiting, self-worth over attachment, and truth over fantasy. Because the right love will never require you to lose yourself just to be chosen.